Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first panel of this event on the Luso American Education Foundation Conference, the 46th Conference on Education and Culture. And as it was mentioned in the opening session, thanks to all of you who are joining us. Thanks to all those of you who are joining us here on Zoom and those who are joining us also on the Facebook Live and other social media outlets. Thanks to the over 30 different Facebook groups that have agreed to carry this live as well. You can watch it live also on the Luso American, Luso American Education Foundation Facebook page, on the PALCUS Facebook page, and on the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute Facebook page. And like I said, over 30 different groups that are carrying this conference as well throughout the day. We had our opening session just in a few minutes ago, and our first session will begin now. And we have sessions, just as a bit of housekeeping. We have a session starting at 11 o'clock. We have a session starting at 1 o'clock, and then we have a session starting at 2:30 and one at 4 o'clock. All the sessions between one and the other, unless we run right into the hour, we will have like a 5 to 7 minute break, which means that if it's longer than 7 minutes, we will disconnect and connect again. If it's only like a 5-minute break, we will have some a musical interpretation by one of our Portuguese Americans here in California, musical talents. And so we will have that for you if and to sort of keep on staying with us. But if it is indeed a longer period between sessions, we will of course disconnect, as we will disconnect with the one that ends that starts at 11. We'll end about 12 and we'll come back at 1 and then 2:30 and then 4 o'clock. It is my privilege to start this one. The topic is called Knowing the Past to Navigate the Future, a conversation with our seasoned generation of the Portuguese American community in California. And the best way to also always begin these panels, we are to have two other panelists that should be arriving soon. As soon as they arrive, we will do the magic of putting them on so all of you can see them as well. But we had invited three folks from the Portuguese American community, all in Northern California, to be part of this panel. One of them is here with us, and that is Mr. Lino Amaral, who is widely known in the Portuguese American community, not just in the Bay Area. He has many friends and many acquaintances in the Central Valley and in Southern California as well, and beyond the state as well. So, Mr. Amaral, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it very much. And on behalf of the Luso American Education Foundation, who you've cared deeply for all of these years, I thank you for your support, your guidance, and your contributions.
Good morning, Mr. Borders. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope that everything goes well, because I'm a little nervous right now.
Oh, don't be nervous, Mr. Amaral. You've spoken in public dozens of times.
Yes. My name is Lino Amaral. I was born in the island of Fayal, Fluminense. I immigrated to this country in 1960. And as soon as I got here, I kind of got involved. I was 17 years old, and I got involved right away with the Portuguese community. The first involvement I had was playing soccer for the Luso American, soccer club from Hayward, but I played for a long time. I got involved also with I live in Fremont, and I got involved with the Holy Ghost in the Union City, with which I've been involved ever since until now. I'm still involved. I also was involved with the Holy Ghost of San Pablo, where I live now for the last 57 years in that area. And right away, I got involved also with the Education Foundation. My father-in-law, which was a man from the mainland of Portugal, introduced me to his friends. I was pretty new in the area of Contra Costa, and they involved me right away with the Education Foundation with the Luso. I've been involved with the Education Foundation from early 60s, 70s, and I was a director. I was also involved with the Luso Fraternal, which I was a president of the Luso Fraternal Federation. Also was a president of at that time was United National Life of Luso. And it's been a life thing for me being involved with the Portuguese community, which is something that I love and I always care for it. Because when I came here in 1960, there was not that many people of the islands at that time. Most of them, the ones that were here, were people that immigrated in the early 1900s. So it wasn't quite the same as it is now, but it's been a pleasure to be involved with all of these organizations. I've learned a lot. I've made many friends, like you mentioned at the beginning, from the north all the way to the south. And it's been a pleasure just to be Portuguese in California. And we'll try to do whatever we can to keep the tradition going of the Portuguese people.
Mr. Morel, let's take a few minutes since we don't have the other two guests on, and I will take advantage of that situation. And that is, you said you arrived at 7 years old in 1960 here.
I
So
was
were you
17 years old.
17? I'm sorry, 17 years old. So you were a product of the Capelinhos Immigration Act.
Yes, I came here after the Capelinhos eruption in 1957, and they opened the immigration for people from the island of Fayal to come to the United States. And I had three brothers that came earlier than me, and I came after they got here. They sent for me. I came by myself. My parents stayed there.
So your family, your three brothers and yourself, were all came to the United States as a product of what is known was known. It was John F. Kennedy, and that was a major player, not the only one, but a major player of the Azorian Refugee Act. A lot of our young people don't know about that. And so it was a major volcanic eruption that affected the island of Fayal. And it offered, as you said, the opportunity for folks from Fayal. And I even know people in Terceira that were living there, but were originally from Fayal and other islands that took advantage of that opportunity, correct?
That's very correct. Not only Terceira, but all the islands of the Azores. There was many people there were from the Fayal. They were in the other islands, and they also had the opportunity to come to this country.
Tell us a little bit about when you arrived. You said it was quite different than it is today. Obviously, 1960s a while ago, and things, the whole world has changed. But how was the community then? You went to the Bay Area. Is that where you? Okay.
I came to the Bay Area, and the community was very active, but mostly old timers and second generations of people they were living at that time. Very few of the ones that came from the Capelinhos that were in the Bay Area. And as a matter of fact, when we came and we saw somebody that we came from the island of Fayal, we were very happy to see them, because there was somebody that came at the same time that we did, and they spoke our language. And most of the ones at that time didn't speak Portuguese. Like myself, I had my father's brother was still speaking, and my cousins spoke Portuguese. But already the husbands and the wives of them, they didn't speak the language, so it was quite difficult. Especially for me that I didn't speak any English at the time, was a little difficult.
I'm sure it was. So you're saying that when you arrived here, and just for our young people that are watching or will watch this, because this is being recorded and will be part of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute Oral History Project that's archived at Fresno State. Just for the young people's sake that are listening, and not so young, we sometimes forget things easily. The Azorian Refugee Act, the product of the volcano eruption in the island of Fayal, was really our first exodus of immigration. So those folks came even before the 1965 Immigration Act. So it was really an opportunity, because very few people came from the Azores. As you said, you got here in 1960, and you say that it was a community that didn't speak Portuguese because there were a lot of second and third generations. It was their parents that had come, or their grandparents, in 1800s and 1900s. So do you think by coming here, when you came here in 1960, and that wave of immigration from Fayal because of the volcano, the Azorian Refugee Act, and then of course the cartas chamadas, we call them in Portugal, of calling and of bringing your brother, your sister, your mom or dad. How important do you think that was to the community that then you grew up in and got to know in the late 60s or late 70s? So how different do you see the community from 1960 when you arrived to, let's say, when you were a young man in your late 20s in 1968 or 1970?
Quite different. The new generation, it's a shame, but they don't seem to have the same love of the Portuguese language that like we did. It's they don't have the time now that we had the time. At that time when we came, any little thing that happened in the Portuguese communities, we all went to that because we were happy to be part of the group. I myself, I live in the Bay Area. Many times I went to Orlando Pasco used to play in the band, and we followed them all the way down to the valley, Agustin, and it was different. We are a community that we stayed together, and we were happy to see each other. Right now, there's so many things for them to do that they don't have the time to get involved as we were then, and which is a shame, because if we don't keep to get our kids involved and our grandchildren, we're not going to have much of a future of the Portuguese people in this country.
Indeed. So in 1960, when you arrived, other than the Portuguese radio programs, they already existed, of course, and they grew exponentially in the 1960s. But other than there were very few, or probably none, I don't think at the time, Portuguese marching bands and Portuguese folklore groups. All of these things came in the 1960s and 70s.
That it is correct. There was no Portuguese bands. I think I could be mistaken, but I think the very first Portuguese band was formed in San Jose area. And from there
were bands in the 20s and 30s, but they died off.
Right, at that time. And there was no soccer clubs. And then there was, like in San Jose, the athletic group were also organized, and many things were different then, but they got together and did so much with what we had before, because the Portuguese people, many years ago, they built Portuguese halls all over California, and the new immigration came and actually got so involved, and they really did a beautiful job of transforming these Portuguese halls from all over the country, I mean, California, I should say, to what they are now, which they are beautiful. At that time, they gave us the opportunity to do something really nice, which we should be very proud.
So it was a way that the younger generation that was coming, such as yourself, coming at 17, and many other people, in your generation that came at your age and even older, my parents came 8 years later. My dad was 38 and my mom 30. So we started seeing, not just younger people, but also people already in their 30s and in the early 40s immigrating, especially in the 1960s and 70s. Give us a little bit of, as you said, you would travel and you would want to be with people. Of course, at this time in the 1960s, the Agustin Festa was the big festa. It was before Thornton and a couple of other, or before Turlock, or before many of the other big festas that now exist. Agustin was it. It was the end of the festa season, and it was the biggest festa. Give us a little bit of a sense how important it was to travel to these areas like Agustin once a year to see family and friends that probably you didn't contact with throughout the entire year, or maybe only once or twice.
That's absolutely true. It was a pleasure, because many times I went and I saw friends I had seen for 3, 4, and 5 years. And it was so nice to see these people that we grew up with. People from the little village, from the little Fresia where I came from, that I hadn't seen for many years. So you could see how happy we would be. It was like a family reunion again, seeing all of these people. And it made you feel good. It made you feel good.
Indeed. So it was the festas at the time were not just an event to go maybe have some Portuguese food, and the sopers, of course. Excuse me, but and also maybe hear a conjunto musical, because we had quite a few of them popped up in the 1960s. But also it was a place that to visit family. And I was talking to someone just yesterday in person, and he was telling me that he recalls being grown up when he was growing up here in the 19 a little bit. They came over before the Capelinhos, one of the few families that came over before the Capelinhos, and we're talking about the middle of the 1950s, a little bit before actually. And he remembers that socialization was going to visit your friends or your parents' friends, and it wasn't it was so it was very important to keep these bonds together, because it was a way to adjust to the new country. So the Festa, in your perspective, was it was seen a little bit different when you came, and let's say the first 10 to 12 years that you were here, 1960 to the 1970s, than it is today, because kids can see each other all the time and they have these new phones and everything else. So how important was that, the Festa, to socialize people, for people to actually to continue being Portuguese?
I thought it was very important for us to really be together and visit our friends. We had time to visit families. If we knew somebody was in the area of the valley and they were friends of ours, we'd visit them. Many times I went all the way down to the valley and spent time with a friend of mine that I went to school with, but he lived so far away from me. But at least once a year we'd go and be together for a few days, and it was a pleasure to be with family. Even today, we don't have time to visit even our own families. We don't have time. But at the time, that our pastime was visit friends, have a barbecue, have a glass of wine or a beer or two.
Indeed. And so when you when the community started to pop up with these organizations, like you said, social clubs, soccer clubs, Portuguese bands, and then later on folklore groups, was it easier for you to be, and of course, by this time, 10, 12, 15 years later, you had the command of the English language, because you came, at the age of 17 young. But do you feel that it was easy? It was easier to connect after you were here because of all these events that popped up? Did it allow you to continue to be Portuguese? If these things hadn't popped up, would you be as Portuguese as you are today?
Absolutely not. I think that was very important for us all to participate in these events. Like I said, whenever was something Portuguese Festa was something, we all traveled to that area to spend time with these people. We had the Portuguese picnics like the Continental that we had every year. We had the Joaquim Esteves, like you mentioned earlier. We had the radio programs, the Joaquim Esteves, that we had this picnic in the North Pavilion. Every year we all went, we were happy. We were seeing friends that we hadn't seen for many years. And it kind of glued us together and made us be a bigger group of people by sticking together and being where we are now.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have this panel, because we wanted to, especially the younger generation, to look at this, because this is part of who they are. Whether, of course, if you're 20 years old right now, you think 1960 or 1970 or even 1980, that's a very, very long time. They can legally say that it was in the past century, and it was. With this is the movement, what we all call, as you know quite well, Mr. Moral, what we all call the post-Capelinhos immigration, whether it was the Azorean Refugee Act, just as in your case, and your brothers and many other people, with roots and ties to Fayal and other parts of the Azores, as you said, but also the Cartas de Chamada, the Family Reunification Act that came, a few years later in the 1960s. This wave of immigration, people like yourself that at the time were 15, 17, 20 years old, they had this sense of a new Portugal, although this was pre-1974, pre the revolution. But it's like, from what I'm reading from you, is that when you arrived in 1960, and many others that arrived a little bit earlier, a little bit later, in those first few years, it was like the Portugal that you knew, even though it was very different than what it is today, was not being lived here because we had not had a flux of immigration for so many years that people were letting go of their traditions.
Yes, that's true. It was quite different, but with the immigration and with the cartas chamada from Portugal, so many more came. I could say like I had three brothers in there, and we end up have 10 brothers and sisters in this country because of the immigration. And not only the immigration was good for us, for the people that come from the islands and for to join us, it was good for the Azore Islands because at the time, I remember as a young man in Fayal, there were so many people and things were quite different for Thai. So the volcano from the Caplinas was a disaster at the time, but it was a blessing for all of us to come from that little island to this country and have a better life for our families and for our children and for all of us in general.
So indeed, and as you say, it revitalized the community today. Other than the Holy Ghost festas, of course, other than the Holy Ghost festas that have been around since, for over 100 years, as you know better than I do, many of the other organizations that we've already mentioned, the soccer clubs and the Philharmonicas and the groups folklore, and even the fraternal organizations spread out even more in the 1960s. These things did not exist, and it would be a very different community. So I'm asking you now, let's, without putting, we don't have uma bola de cristal to look into, and even if we did, it probably would be wrong. We can't predict the future. But having come at an era, Mr. Amaral, where there wasn't much, as you said, because it was already the children and the grandchildren of immigrants, having come in that era, seeing how the immigration really grew immensely, and new things were brought into the community, and all these things that started. And now looking at it, because you've lived, I'm not going to say you still have another 25 or 30 years to live, I'm sure.
I don't know about that. It would be nice, but I doubt.
But you're, having a long life, and that's wonderful, and you look amazing. Is that my question is in the aspect, are you concerned? I'm very concerned, but maybe I'm the oddball out in the bunch. Are you concerned that some of the things that you saw in 1960 that disappeared, and then your generation came, and that generation that came to the 1960s revitalized things and just brought new blood, as we call it, sangue novo, into the community? We have not had immigration, as you and I and everyone following us know. We have not had immigration in numbers since 1980. Basically, when the just to contextualize everybody that's listening and watching, in 1980 there was a major earthquake in the island of Terceira. We all thought that there was going to be tons of immigrants come, like they came in the 1960, and it didn't happen because we had a regional government. People got money to rebuild their houses. Times were different, and very few families came in 1980 and 81. But that was the last of it. So for 40 years we haven't had any immigration. Are you concerned that the community that you saw in 1960 might be the community of the near future?
I'm concerned because being Portuguese and being a proud father that I have been of my children, I always took my children to these Portuguese festas, and they all got involved in it. They all speak the language and they still care for it. But many of the parents that got away from these festas, and they don't bring their kids in. And I'm concerned that in the near future, there's not enough Portuguese sons and grandsons and granddaughters that would they're not getting involved now. And I don't know what that's going to bring to our future, because I don't think they're going to have what we had before. Before we had the halls were already here, and they gave us the opportunity to keep the tradition du Espírito Santo from as we all know, the Espírito Santo is the tradition from these old people. And they made it big, and it's been big for a long time, but now I see it declining, and I don't see enough young people get involved. And I wish there was a way that we could convince these young people to be part of the Portuguese culture that we've had the pleasure to live for many years.
I have a feeling, Mr. Amaral, and I'd like your thoughts on it because you just touched upon it a little bit. I have a feeling that maybe our generation, because I'm a little bit younger than you, but not that much
A lot younger.
we're I was born in 58 and you were born the decade before, but
I was born in 42.
okay, well, there's a little bit of a difference,
Quite
but
a difference.
not that a little bit. Congratulations, you look amazing.
Thank you.
My sense, Mr. Amaral, is this. It seems like maybe we lived the Portuguese, and those who are here and those following us also, maybe some of us lived the Portuguese identity and the Portuguese nationality and the Azorean identity, those of us who are from the Azores, so vividly and so intensively that we expect maybe too much out of the young people. What do you think?
Well, it is possible that we expect a lot, but their lives is quite different than ours. Their life now, they're busy with their families. They don't have the time. And when I first came, life was slower in the United States than it is now. Things are pretty fast. Everything is running like crazy. I think I worry about that. And that probably is one of the reasons that the young generation is not getting involved. And not only that, we came with the love of where we came from, especially with the Fechers dos Pizza. I used to play in a band in Fayal, so I know these things. The Fechers, the tradition that we had, we still brought them here, and they still give us the drive. But some of our kids and grandchildren, they weren't quite brought up the same way, and so that we're losing a little bit by not bringing them in. And there's some of them, they still come in, but not as much as I would like to see.
Indeed, and so your feeling is that maybe life is different, of course, and maybe we do expect. I just hear from young people, and I know of course you have your grandchildren, you have also your children, but your son is already not so young. I mean, he's still young, but not a teenager, 20 years old. And no, you're not 20, Lino. I'm sorry. And the idea that I hear a lot from these young people, being at the university now in the last 4 years, and they're not teenagers, but by the same token, they're just in their early 20s. That they're very happy being Portuguese, just going to the sopas once or twice a year. They don't feel the need to go to any of these other things that you said that were so important of that. And so that may be one of the reasons why the community, and I don't think we'll have immigration because now people are immigrating to the Azores, as you know, and your lovely island of Fayal has so many people from different regions now. Yeah. That wasn't the case in 1960. Do you, I don't know if things will be like they ever were because the need is not there. Your thoughts?
I think you are absolutely correct. I don't think there will ever be the same as were in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s. And like you said, in the 80s, the immigration stopped coming. And luckily, we had enough young people that came, and we been keeping this tradition all these other years. But I don't see our future being the same as it was then.
Indeed.
I feel bad about it, but that's the way it is.
Sure. I think we have to accept and we have to say this is not going back, and I think that's something that also our generation, whether you were born in 1940 or 1960, that 20-year time span of generations, of kind of almost two generations in one, we have to accept that, it's time for the young people, and it's going to be a different community. And it's just, how do we help them build the community that they feel comfortable with?
I think a man in your position and all of these Portuguese teachers that at that time we heard very little about Portuguese education, teachers and professors. And now we're seeing all of the teachers, professors and doctors. And if we had just a few more that would kind of put the word out for these young people. If you tell them, like you said, what nationality you are, I'm Portuguese. And he said they're very proud of being Portuguese, but we need to get them involved a little bit more. And I just go back to like the Luzu Fraternal Federation with their conventions that they have with all these young kids, 400 and 500 kids. Whatever happens, they're so in tune with the Portuguese traditions, with the Portuguese folklore. And once they leave, nobody brings them back, and nobody tries to bring them back and be part of this Portuguese beautiful culture that we have in this country.
Indeed. Indeed, there's a lot of work to be done. I agree. We have our other two panelists have joined us, and that's Decio Oliveira, but we can see the name. We can see Decio's face. So Decio, if you can turn on your camera. And we also have the lovely Patricia Costa, but Pat, we can't see you either. We can hear you, but we can't see you. So we need you to turn on that camera, or else we'll do it without your face. But it's not, as we say in Portuguese, não é a mesma coisa without seeing, you know. So I don't know if you can put the camera on. We can see you. I mean, we can hear you, but we cannot see you. But
well,
you can
I've
hear
had difficulty getting on, and like they say, "Val mais tarde que nunca," but I'm sorry about that. And
that's okay.
Angela, my claim to fame is being Angela's mom, but she told me 11 o'clock, and I thought, oh my gosh.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Sorry. I'm awfully sorry.
Don't be sorry. So we can't see you, but we can have the conversation. We can register the voice, and that's good. So, Pat, just a little bit. Would you mind telling us your story? I mean, I believe you were already born here, but tell us a little bit about your story as a Portuguese American. If you were born here, and of course, where your parents are from, and how your contact began with the Portuguese community, please.
Well, I've been a member of Luso since I was 13 years old. And so my parents were always very active in the Portuguese community in Sacramento. So, you know, it's just been instilled in you know, we're so involved. And my husband was involved in Stockton also. And we just, you know, made sure that our children were involved. But then as they got older, you know, you don't have control over that. I mean, we were involved in Luso, and like Lino was saying, Luso, yes, it's great. But after they dance and all that, we lose them, you know. And actually Luso, they have a wonderful setup. They have all the names of these kids, but we can't follow them. Nobody gets back to them. And of course, I know things have changed. And like my son's married, you know, American girls. So there that went. And they know the cultures. They like the festas, they like the foods, but you know, they've gone their own way. And today, kids are so involved with sports and soccer, and it's hard to bring them into the fold. And I don't know, it's getting more difficult each time. And, you know, being involved in so much, we're proud of our culture, and so are the kids. But to keep them there and entice, we're having a difficult time. It's really changed. So, and it's a beautiful culture. I mean, you know, and people like Lino and people our age, you know, we're getting a little bit older, and to keep them involved. And we're lucky that our children want to be involved, like Lino Jr. and like Angela. It makes it nice, and we're proud of them, and they like everything so much. And actually, they're in Portugal right now, and I'm here.
No,
so
Angela's flying back today, so
yes,
we need her in a panel tomorrow. She's already agreed to that. Pat, a little bit about, so how was it? You were born here, correct?
I was born here, yes, but
okay, but you were raised very Portuguese.
Yes, I was raised with my parents. The first 5 years of my life, I was on the ranch because my dad was in the Army and my mother followed him. And so therefore, when I started school, couldn't speak English at all. And so I can read it, I can speak it, I can sing it. And so, but other than that, yeah, very much Portuguese, the foods, the culture, the values, and being involved in festas and a society like Luso. I had the opportunity to do that. And of course, speaking the language and having a husband that spoke it also made it nice, because then I could, you know, we continued it. And the kids didn't pick it up as much as I would like, you know, but And then as they got older, of course, Angela now, she eats, drinks, sleeps, everything Portuguese. So, which makes it nice. And they're instilling that in Aurelia. So, yeah.
Do you think that Mr. Morale and I were just talking about this, Pat, which is the issue that the community, and Angela and I have had these discussions for forever now, at least for the last 6 to 8 years. Do you think that sometimes we ask too much of the young people? In other words, Mr. Morale was saying, and I recall, especially those who were immigrants, but in your case, being raised very Portuguese, the same, the Portuguese organizations, whether it be Luso or the other fraternal organizations that existed at one time, many of them, as we know, and the Portuguese halls and the Portuguese, and then later on, in the 1960s and 70s, the bands and the folklore groups and everything else. Do you think that sometimes we ask Portuguese Americans now, and in your case, you of course you have an exception with Angela, but that's an exception. That's not the rule. Let's put it that way. Most Portuguese Americans now, they're third generation or even fourth, are very disconnected. Do you think that we may be? It was such an important part of who we were, but do you think that we're asking too much for them to be like us?
To the fold? Is that what you're saying? No, I really don't, because I don't put any demands on my kids. I mean, if, even during the holidays and things of that nature, they like the tradition, but as far as to continue it, it's more difficult, and it's hard to get them involved in
We're losing your sound. I don't know if you're.
Oh, I don't think we force it upon them. I really don't. I don't know of anyone that would do that. Making it mandatory that they do. We want them to be involved, and if they want to come, they seem to enjoy all the dances.
Okay, we're losing your voice a little bit. I don't know if it seems like something's moving. Just a quick question then. That we also discussed. I'd like to get your take on that as well, which is, we are the thought that we just discussed a few minutes ago was that before you got on, is that some of these things are going to be lost. That's just the way it is. Some of the things have already been lost. I mean, we've seen some things change immensely in the last 10 to 12 years. So, what are your thoughts? What's other than, like you said, there's not this contact with the younger people, but how do we will we just have a community basically where the majority of people, and I'm not talking about Angela or Lino Amaral Jr. or a couple other people, I'm talking about the other 94 or 95%. Where are we going to have a community where people are just very happy going to the festa once a year, and that is enough for them to be Portuguese?
And that's sad. It's sad because the cultural part of it, and there are so many festas. There are so many that we're so divided, even though we are one. You know what I mean? I don't know if you understand that. Like, how many festas can we go to and so forth. But I think if we would bring them closer together or not have as many, but be more united, I think it would be easier. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I know it's very frustrating. I would just love to, we don't want to lose it, all the cultural part of it, but that seems to be the food and the dance and so forth. And if we continue the traditions, I don't know. Religion has changed, and we base that a lot on our festas and so forth. And so that part of it, but we don't force them to go to the mass. We don't force them to do that. So I don't know. And we have mulled this around and around and around. How do you get your younger people involved? How do you bring them back to the fold? But it seems like the ages between 30 and 25 and 35, they're doing other things with their children. They're raising their families. So, it's frustrating.
You brought up a good point there, Pat, when you said, how do you bring them to the fold? Do you think the fold has to change and go to them?
Yes, I do. We need to let them be more involved. We need to take their ideas. We need to have opened up our doors and say, okay, we're not going to have the meeting at the hall. We're going to have the meeting somewhere else. Where would you like it? At a pizza place or at a this or a that, and try to get them more engaged in stuff that they would like. And I remember when Angela was president of or chairman of the Festa for San Jose for the celebration there, she would go to the meetings and she said, Ma, I don't want to go back because they keep knocking me down. And finally they opened up and said, oh yeah, her ideas, let's do it. And they were so glad they did, because look at where it's at now, but you need to let them try. You need to let them, and not that they're always going to be good, but I really think that, they need to, we need to change a little bit.
And some of these events, and it continues like that. I mean, this conference is one prime example. Okay, I've had tons of meetings and tons of discussions with younger people and older people, younger than me, older than me, very young, about the conference. And it seems like we get, this, but we can use this as an example to others. So it seems like people say, well, the young people, if the young people don't care if this conference dies, for example, I've heard this before, many people, the young people don't care if this conference dies. So maybe if they don't want this conference, why are we doing it?
Well, because we believe in it. I mean, we feel, you believe in this and you think, let's not give up. Let's continue with it. And, it's difficult. It really is, because you don't want to, it's something good. It's something, like even applying for scholarships. I've noticed they've said, oh, well, I'm not going to do that. That's too much work to do that. Well, you only have to fill out a few little papers and that's it, but they just don't want to take the time to put into it. I just don't know. I don't know. I seem to be, I keep saying, I don't know, because I've been doing this. I mean, how many years? It's just, over 60 years, and being involved and trying to keep it going. And I don't know.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do the next 4 days after today, and the next 5 days, actually, including today, which is we're taking, this generation and discussing how it was, and some of the ideas, and then we're going to hear all these young people. We have people from the age, the youngest one at 17, and lots of them in their 20s and 30s and 40s, and I'm going to make us try to make. I'm not a very authoritative person, but I'm going to try to make what Lino Jr. So I can't blame this one on the father. It's Lino Jr.'s fault, as he said. We need to have a Jesus moment. So we're going to try to have this moment where we actually, this very truthful moment where we look at what we are, look at what we want to be, and what is worth salvaging, and maybe what is not worth salvaging. And so that's something that I think that we need to do. I had a Portuguese priest that was here in Tulare that everybody knows throughout the state, Father Raul Marta, who is now retired and enjoying his life at 85 years old in his beautiful city of Lisbon. But Father Marta, not being from the Azores, one of the few priests not being from the Azores. Oh, we can see you now, Pat. Great. One of the few people not being from the Azores, but in a community that's here in Tulare County, it's 97.9% from the Azores, and he fit in very well with the Missouri community. But he also told us one thing. Those of us at that time, I was young and naive. Not that I'm less naive. I'm just old now. 20-some-year-old, and he would tell us all the time, it's better to kill it than let it die. So if things don't make sense to the young generation and they can't turn it around, nix it. So maybe that's a thought that we need to think. It's sad, as you said, but maybe that's a thought.
Yeah. And, there's a lot of young people that are more like entrepreneurs. They don't want to be involved in the festa. They don't want to be, but yet they want, how do I say this? They like the entrepreneurship, getting together for things like that. And it's nice. It's stimulating to see that. I like that. And at my age too, going to festas and everything is okay. But now being by myself, I really don't go. But, I think we need to keep that generation or that group of people involved in that. I think they might be of help to do that rather than the ones that are just going to the dances and just going whatever. I just, of course, education has always been my thing. And I think that, you need to look at that.
you need both sides, but it seems like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe I'm biased too, but I think that if we had Portuguese language courses in 100 high schools instead of 10 throughout California, the community would be much different because kids could take it and they wouldn't have to take it after school. They don't have to travel anywhere. It's there. It's offered, in period 3 of a high school class. So
Yes.
that's something that we have kind of, and I think, maybe some people take offense to this, but I'm having the Jesus moment that Lino Jr. told me to have. So, which is, I think that we need to face the music. And the sad reality is we haven't been able to build Portuguese language programs. They've actually decreased, unfortunately. And so, as an educator like you, I think that Portuguese language is very important at the high school level, or else we're going to lose it. Mr. Morales, I want to ask you one question also, because that Pat brought up. And that I brought up, and Pat's comment also, which is, Father Martha's line: "It's better to kill it than to let it just die in pieces and just be there on paper and doesn't really exist." What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm disappointed to hear that, because once you kill it, it never comes back again.
That's true.
There's an old saying: if you close a door, that door will never open again. I think we
Right.
should keep that door open, and hoping that people, the young people, we can convince some of them. We're never going to convince them all, but I think we should keep as much open as we can to convince some of these young people to come in. And there's few of them that they do believe, and they have that Portuguese tradition and culture and them, that they want to be part of it. So I think we should try to keep the door open that they'll come back and do the things that we hope them to do.
Indeed. Desu, I think you can hear us now, I hope.
Yes.
Oh, good. And we can't see you, but we can see the name Desu. So we know that's the amazing Dr. Desu Oliveira, poet. Welcome, Desu. A little bit, as finally we have you on, a little bit, tell us, if you don't mind, in about 2 or 3 minutes, your story, when you came to America, and how was that transition from the beautiful island of San Miguel?
Well, as you know, I came on a student visa, and there was no time to go to Portuguese festivals, nothing. It was just books and books and books for 8 years. After graduating from UCSF, I came to San Jose, and I was very disappointed with the community. It was an old community. First, there was no one that spoke Portuguese at DMV. Second, no one as a social worker, no one at the Social Security office. And that really bothered me. A couple of years after I graduated, I became president of PSC. And we start having...
That's the Portuguese Athletic Club, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just for people who don't know what PAC is. That's
yeah.
it. Thank you.
With Joe Meadows, God rest his soul, we were interested in doing a few things to modernize the community. And one of them was to give scholarships for college students. As a matter of fact, Dr. Graves, well, he was one that received the first one. Then we start working on the social workers. That was easy. Social Security office, that was easy also. DMV, not so easy, but we made it. The hardest thing was to implement the Portuguese language at the grammar school, high school, and university levels. So we contacted the superintendent, and for the end, darling, there was no problem because there were Portuguese-speaking teachers. One of them was a sister of Professor Luisa Silva. When it came to San Jose High, that was a different story. We had to fight. And at the last meeting, I told the superintendent, look, either we have a course in Portuguese at San Jose High, or this weekend I'll contact a few dropouts, Portuguese dropouts, and they break all the windows. This is honest to God. Luis knows that, okay? And he says, okay, get me an instructor. So we got an instructor. Then came the hardest one, San Jose State. That was complicated. After a few fights, the head of the language department was a German fellow. He said, okay, you have to get me an instructor that has a master's degree, and you have to pay his or her salary. And the next year, you have to have a PhD. So we contacted Sister Amelia, who was a principal at Five Wound School, and she did a terrific job. She was great. The following year, we were very lucky to get Heraldo Silva, who continued. But thanks to Zé Luisa Silva, who was the one that was feeding San Jose State. If it wasn't for him, I think we would have failed. But fortunately, we had a good program. It's still going, not as strong as I would like to, but that's the way it goes. That's the story of my life.
That's the story of your life, which there's a lot more to the story than that. But today we're concentrating on the community. Sorry, excuse me. Desu, so how do you see, and we've had Mr. Moral and Mrs. Costa also say their piece on this, and I wanted to have your piece before we end. We got to end it in about another 6 minutes or so. So how do you see this community today? So first of all, I'm going to ask you a multiple question, but I know that you'll answer all of it. The great thing about asking you questions, you answer everything complete, of course, like like Pat did and Mr. Moral as well. The thing is, I was asking you I want to ask you this question. So, how do you see the community today? How do you see it in relevance to what it was, not just when you arrived, but even 30 years ago? And do you think it's fair that we ask young people to do the things that we did? Do organizations have to? Some organizations have to disappear? Do some have to come together? Do a fusion as we've had? Some of the fraternal societies have been doing that, and even in the organizations. Do you think that we're being fair in asking them to continue some of this stuff? Does it make sense? Because to some of them, it may not make sense. So what's your sense of the community today, and what do you think will be maybe 5-10 years from now, maybe even a little bit longer?
As we know, the young people now think differently than we did. However, and I'm going to support what Patricia said, the big problem is that we have too many organizations. Like in San Jose, we have 3 bands, and they are fighting to survive. Why not have one? I recall about 30 years ago, I made a motion because I belong to the Luso American Education Foundation to get the 7 societies together and form one finance. Everything else, the social living, the social activities would stay the same, but the finances would be just one. The big problem was, who's going to be the first president? Mayor Reyes or what's his name that was at the name will come. And it died right there. Okay, and this was at a conference down at UCLA. So it was very sad. Unfortunately, our sons, like yours, they go to college away from where they were raised. They get married to English-speaking people, and it's very hard to maintain the language. In my case, I'm very fortunate that my daughters speak it fluently. My grandkids, they know a few words. I think we made a mistake in the past not attracting more youth. Like I was part of the group that started the 2030s in San Jose. And there were some people that were against it. But at that time, you became 21 and you had to lead with youth people. So they would drop out. And fortunately, the 2030 group was the uh, the group that united the young with the old. Uh, Aside from that, we can't compare the youngsters today to the youngsters of my time, your time. We didn't have all the things that they have today. Uh, we had books, they don't have books. We didn't have phones, we didn't have anything. And we were happy. Uh, so I don't know. That's a tough question. Uh, I wish I had the answer.
Well, I don't think any of us have the answers. We're kind of looking for some things. I think we're just basically this panel, which we're coming to the end here in about another few minutes. We have our next panelists already, two of them already on, ready to be on, and we are looking for the third one. But I think what we're trying to do is kind of tell the story of the past, because I think it's important for young people to know that. Tell the story of the past and also look at how it was. I mean, it's very important what all three of you all said, and starting with when Mr. Amaral said, when he said that when he arrived here in 1960, to the Bay Area, there were very little Portuguese things. And you just said it also, Desu, there was hardly anything, there was Portuguese at these social services and language programs. And so the community hasn't always been like this, or the community hasn't always been like it was, and it's, 30 years ago with lots of things were going on, a few less are going there. So just like changes happened, between the 20s and the 50s, these changes are happening now. I just think that we have technology, we have, different education levels, we have different composition of the communities. It's easier. Maybe it's it still takes, a few hours to drive from point A to point B, but through these new technologies, we can connect people. And there are over 500 cities now in California that have Portuguese. I mean, that probably wasn't the case in the 1960s because everybody came to the same area. All the Portuguese lived in the zone in Sacramento or Tulare or San Jose or this area. Now they're all over these different cities that we did not associate with Portuguese people. So it's a challenging. It's challenging, but I think that if we work hard at it, I think we can do all we can. And what I wanted this panel to do is exactly what you guys did, and I appreciate it, which is contextualize what the community was, what has been your experiences and how you see it as someone with your experience. And then let the young people, that's what we're hoping to hear from them in the next 4.5 days, let them, the young and not so young, decide what kind of community they want to have. I think we can only do our part by telling our experiences, and offering to be there in case they want to become leaders, and they should. And we just let them do their thing. Some things may not make sense to us. Some things we may say, this is not going to, work, but it might just work because we have the experience of an older community, and they have a new way to look at it. So thank you so much, Mr. Amaral, Mrs. Costa, Dr. Desu Oliveira, good friends and good people that have done so much for the community. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your opinions here today. It's been very, very important enlightening all of us. And I'm going to go around and start with Linu first and just ask you to say 2 or 3 words of wisdom on your behalf to the community as we say goodbye to this panel and welcome the next one.
Well, I'd just like to wish the community and your conference a very successful conference, and hope that we can convince the young people to get involved. I know it's very difficult, but with a little work and a little challenge to them, they may be able to come back and be part of this great organization that we all belong to. And thank you for inviting me, Mr. Porch.
My pleasure. Thank you. Pat, your words of wisdom.
Well, once again, I want to, wish you a successful 4 days. And I hope that the kids will be very true to what they say. I hope they will be opened up so that we know what they would like and what they would want. And just knowing that we're willing to help them, that we're willing to be there for them. And I think it will work. I really do. It takes a lot of work and, a lot of stamina to continue with it. And the idea that just not giving up is good. But anyway, like I said, anything I can do or be of service, I'm there. And I'd like to thank you also for letting me be on the panel, even though I was late. I apologize.
No, please, no.
Technology isn't my thing, but
Well,
I was
we
ready
need to
for
bring
11 o'clock.
we need to bring you all back at with a different composition and continue this conversation. Desu, your words of wisdom is always from a poetic aspect. So be a poet, okay?
Now, my wish is that we would have more youngsters going to college.
Mm-hmm.
That's my wish. And I don't know how you can do what you've been doing. The other day I was talking with Jean Louis and I said, man, he's spreading too thin. How can he accomplish everything that he has accomplished? And
Oh, that's just your friend. That's just your friendship talking. Okay, we'll cross that one off the record.
No. That's the honest truth. Okay, I know how it is. Okay, I used to sleep 2-3 hours a night. Now at the 88, I sleep 4 or 5. Never stop. But I have to commend you for everything you have done to the community. It's too bad that we don't have a few more throughout the state. That would be great. But that's with more answers. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Desu, you're always invited, as you know. And I'm actually going to invite you soon for something else with the poetry. So thank you so much. Thank you, Desu Oliveira, Patricia Costa, Lino Amaral. Thank you a million times over for not just being here, but for who you are and what you have done. We appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
And those of you who are following us, please stay on the line because we're going to bring on we're going to bring on some of the we're going to bring on, as I said, the new panelists that we have, and those, so no use in no use in basically should I say turning off your computers and turning off your phones or turning off wherever you're watching us, because we're just going to transition. Since we just had really an hour for this one, we'll have to transition from one to another, and we're going to continue, and we're going to bring in the next panelists. We already have 2 of the 3 panelists here. Hopefully we'll have the third one soon. If not, we'll start like we did last time. We'll start with those who are on, and then we will continue. So I'm going to ask the panelists who are coming on next, which is the title of the next session is called Navigating the Future. That's a theme, of course, as you all know. Navigating the Future, the Portuguese American experience in California public service. And we have the two of these gentlemen already on here, and which is of course, and I'm looking for the third one just to make sure that Josh is not on here yet. Hopefully he will be on. I know he had a meeting at 10 that he thought might run just a few minutes after 11. So thank you all for joining us. Again, thanks to the 2 panelists that are here with us. We're going to change a couple of things here so we can see you a little bit better. And we would like to, of course, bring on the 2 smiling faces of Lee Neves, who is a legend, and the other legend is Larry McCarty. And so put this a little bit in the speaker view and welcome them and thank them for doing agreeing to do this panel. I know they're both very busy. Now Professor Lee Neves and Supervisor Larry McCarty from Tulare County. So welcome to both of you. I'm going to start with Larry and just ask Larry to I know folks here in the Valley know who Larry is in Tulare County, especially, but since we have folks throughout the not only the state, but folks from the East Coast and even Portugal that are watching us through Facebook Live. So, and thank you for your comments. Larry, if you can just take about 5 to 7 minutes or so to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your Portuguese connection.
Good morning. My name is Larry Macari, and I'm half Portuguese on my mother's side. My grandmother was Adeline Mello, had the Portuguese radio program for probably 38 years, something like that. I grew up in Tulare, non-English speaking. I was raised Portuguese speaking only in the 60s. And that was a fun time. You know, there was no inclusion then. We had to focus on our own culture to get things done. Grandma taught me about community, and she was available 24/7 as far as helping the dairymen. If somebody get hurt, somebody worked. I remember on a radio program, I used to go speak with her. We would collect clothes and things for people that got hurt milking and working. I remember when the earthquake hit, all the radio programs got together and got a bunch of donations. So I went to all the festivals. I went to the dances. I knew the other radio personalities. I grew up with that. So that's something that still to this day, brings back fond memories. I've lost a lot of my Portuguese speaking. Once I get around, I start understanding a little better, but my pronunciation has really suffered. Yeah. Since the loss of grandma, I've got no one really to speak to, and it is a skill. I've tried to raise my girls who are in going to the festivals and going to events. And I think that's what we need to do more of is when we see more of the older people showing up and us that grew up in that, but I don't see a lot of the younger ones coming up. So they kind of lose that. I went to law enforcement, 33 years of law enforcement, and now I'm retired as a captain with the Tulare County Sheriff's Office, and now I'm on the board of supervisors. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun now. And Denise and I finally connected back after I don't know how many years, but we've known each other for many, many years. And he started getting me involved more on this side of it with our culture. So I'm having to join it. I joined SPDS. I grew up with those guys down there in Tipton. So I'm getting back more into it and have my girls, they're going to college now, but now Brooklyn's in Chico. When she's calling me, asking me how to find the festa in Chico. So they're growing up and they're doing that. And I think that's what we need to do is bring our children back into the family setting like we used to.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. Indeed. And we're going to discuss all that. And thank you for also being part of the California Portuguese American Coalition. Larry was at the first event that we had after the pandemic in June. And he was just actually recently also at an event with the president of Portugal, Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa. And so Lee Neves, as I said, the icon in the Portuguese community, as far as he's a young icon. Usually icons are like over 60, but Lee became an icon at a younger age. Lee has been, you'll tell us a little bit about yourself, your parents. I know São Sebastião is going to come up, and Terceira. And so tell us a little bit about your Portuguese experience and your experience in the political world.
So yeah, my name is Lee Neves. Meu mãe e meu pai é do Terceira. Meu pai é do Antiga Vila de São Sebastião. E minha mãe é do Feiteira. Eles casou em Terceira e eles vêm para os Estados Unidos. Okay, I can go back to my English now. So after they got married, came over here. They had my older brother, and they're like, "Oh, we got to do this over again," and they had me. So just kidding, not really. And then also my younger sister. So there's three of us, which is, most people think is a large family. And are you kidding me? And my parents are always asked, why'd you have such a small Portuguese family of only three children? Grew up in Oakdale and Hillmar, California. Graduated from Hillmar High School. Then went to the University of the Pacific, both for undergrad and law school. Got my law degree from the McGirt School of Law. And much to my mother's disappointment, she wanted me to marry a nice Portuguese girl, be partner in law firm, and have 2.14 kids and a white picket fence. I went straight into politics. and have been in politics 24 years now. Really started in 1998. I've worked for people up and down the valley and even across the United States. Dick Monteith, who was a longtime state senator and county supervisor, and currently I was the chief of staff until I had to go make Florida my home for a little bit. Still his political consultant, state assembly member Carlos Villapudua, also the new district attorney of San Joaquin County, Ron Freitas, who is also Portuguese, and also one of our panelists, Josh Pedroso. Very happy to have Josh as a client, very happy to help him win that supervisor's race. I now call Stockton and Gainesville, Florida home. Obviously, Denise, you know why I went to Gainesville. Had a minor medical procedure there. But it's a great place. And all I got to say is, to end this all off, is go Gators. So with that, I also do teach, as Denise alluded to, I also go by the title professor. I teach a political science class at my alma mater, the University of the Pacific, which the fact that I'm a professor tells you all you need to know about the state of higher education in America today.
That's a good laugh. Thank you. No, it's not. It's UOP is fortunate to have you from a political aspect, because you can be very objective, and that is indeed what we you have done political consulting on both sides of the aisle, and that's so important, because that's what we need to do. I keep on telling people, where it's a Democratic district, let's find a Portuguese American that's Democrat. Where it's a Republican district, find a Portuguese American that's Republican. That's what we have to do to win elections in the Portuguese American community. Don't run Democrats in Republican districts, because they're going to lose, and don't run Portuguese Americans, I should say, and don't run Portuguese Americans, Republicans in a Democratic district, at least those that have a wide significance. I mean, if it's like 2 or 3 points, as you know better than I do, and Larry as well, anything can happen. But if there's a wide, variety, I mean, if it's like, a 15 or an 18 point spread, you're asking for trouble if you're of the party that is not controlled there. So a little bit about Larry. What made you get into politics? I know that, you retired you're very big in law enforcement, and law enforcement is something that's very important at a county level. And explain that to us a little bit. The sheriff's department, what is the difference between the sheriff's department and a city police, and how important is the sheriff's department for the county, the running of the county?
Well, the sheriff's an elected position, and they basically provide law enforcement in unincorporated areas of the county, but they're also over the jail. There's coroner duties, there's civil divisions. So there's a lot of other divisions that the sheriff encompasses, where city law enforcement is strictly law enforcement. So the sheriff has many more duties that they're responsible for covering. And actually, believe it or not, the primary duty is custody, the inmates. And that's, the actual patrol side is secondary, but obviously public safety is number one in the sheriff's mind. So that's what we go by. I started, like I said, law enforcement. I was raised helping people. I didn't touch too much about what grandma did, but grandma spent, not only did she help people through the program and what she did, she interpreted for people in court. She taught citizenship classes, and actually went up to federal court and helped people become citizens, not only people from Portuguese descent, but all cultures. So that's something I was raised with. And when I got in law enforcement, I was able to help people and continued. And I built a reputation of being a guy that if I said I was going to do something, I did everything I could to achieve it. And so when I retired, people were still calling me for help. My district was not being represented very well because people were calling me for issues. And then actually the sheriff approached me and asked me to run. So I did. And I had, the night of my kickoff event at my house, I had 0 RSVPs. My wife convinced me to buy rent tables and chairs. We had seating for 120. The event was at 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm looking at a sea of empty chairs and tables, and I started into deep depression. By 4:30, people started showing, and we had over 200 show up. And and everyone has said it's because of what we had done. So that's what the work ethic grandma and mom instilled in me of helping people. And I have them to thank, to be honest with you. But I like helping people. And the thing about the local level, I've been asked to run at the state level, but the local level is where I can get more done for my constituents, for our county. So I'm enjoying that. And, it's great to be able to help your friends and people that you know, and help your community and see the change that we can implement here at the local level.
Wonderful. And you're doing a great job. And we'll come back to that local level because that's an important point that you mentioned. Lee, as a political consultant, you've done a lot of consulting for supervisors and mayors. And that is our stronghold in the Portuguese American community. We have, as both of you know, because of our list of the California Portuguese American Coalition, we have nearly 142 elected officials in California that we know of that are of Portuguese background, but we always discover one here and there. So it's probably a lot more than that. But it's hard because people's names also change, like I'm thinking of the mayor of Modesto, who does not have a Portuguese name, but her maiden name was Silva. And so we probably have a few, especially females that do not have Portuguese names, or even males whose mother might have been Portuguese, but father wasn't. Like Larry has an Italian name, but he's Portuguese male from his mom's side. And so the idea that and most of these, Lee, are in the valley. There's of the 140, it's I don't think there's more than 20 outside the valley. I don't have the list in front of me. And when I mean the valley, I mean the interior of California. So in other words, the valley, Bakersfield, and then going up north of Sacramento as well. Those Glen counties and those areas where Portuguese Americans have been there from, a generation ago. Why do you see that? Why do you see such a big percentage of elected officials? The congressmen we've had have always been from the valley, from Tracy all the way down to, there's never been a Portuguese American congressman from Southern California or Northern California. What are your thoughts on that?
So first, there's another Portuguese elected official you can add to the list. Supervisor Robert Rickman out of San Joaquin County is actually half Portuguese. His mother's last name is Silva. And I kid him all the time that he has to go with the German name, not the Portuguese name. I think it's because, look, if there's one thing that the valley, and especially people in the valley and the Portuguese community, have in common, it's called common sense. It is the fact that 1 and 1 equals 2. Just get A, B, C, and D done. And especially with local elected officials, your job is not there to be a partisan warrior. Your job is not there to take on these giant philosophical fights. And I will use 2 examples, that one I witnessed firsthand, the other I was involved in firsthand. So when I did Ron Freitas's race for district attorney this past year, our basic campaign theme the entire time was, bringing common sense back to the district attorney's office. Voters, especially in the valley, want your local elected officials to do their job. And literally, Mr. Freitas would say the entire time, I am going to let prosecutors prosecute. The 2-term incumbent that we unseated, she joined with Chesa Boudin, George Gascon. She was going very far left politically, and started getting in the national political scene, started not doing her job, started worrying about being a superstar politically, and that cost her. Michael Tubbs, the former mayor of Stockton, what was his problem? Is he started to get too much into the partisan theoretical, I'm going to talk about all these national type issues, instead of, I have a pothole in front of my house needs to be fixed, or it's Stockton, I don't want to hear gunshots every night. And so Portuguese people, look, we all grew up on a dairy. I grew up on a dairy, 300 dairy off of Highway 120 in Oakdale, California. If an irrigation ditch broke at 3 in the morning, you went out to fix it. Cows needed to get milk, you found a way to get them into the milk barn to get them milked. That's what voters expect out of their elected officials. If my street needs to be fixed, I expect it to be fixed. If if the swimming pool at the local pool doesn't work, I expect you guys to fix it. I don't care about partisan stuff. I don't care about all this high theoretical stuff. I want what my tax dollars go for. I want you to make sure that they're working. And that's why you see so many Portuguese Americans, especially in the Valley, be very successful at being local elected officials.
And it seems like, and I'll ask both of you this, and Lee first, since you just spoke, and then Larry, which is, am I wrong? And if I am, tell me. Lee has no problem telling me if I'm wrong. Which is, is there less of a party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, is there less of a party label on local officials than there is? Because you just mentioned that a couple of people that in more of a local office looked to be national heroes within their own political party or partisanship, and that's why they lost, and that's why they had issues that they had. Is there, do people really in the city care more about, I've always heard this, they care more about the person than they care about the party? Is that right or wrong, or is it a combination of both?
I'll take it first. I think especially with local electeds, they care more about the person getting the job done. Current Mayor Stockton is a Republican, and I can guarantee you, when you saw the name on the ballot and they had R after his name and D after the other person's name, they would not have voted him just because there was an R after his name. But he was, without a party affiliation, better alternative than the incumbent, so he won. So especially with local electeds, you're voting more for the person, more for the person you think is going to get the job done. Once you get to that state legislative level of things, then way too many people see DNR, and our nation is so polarized on that national state legislative level, especially on a national level, that you could love the person to death. They came up with the story of why you started calling people yellow dog Democrats, and there was this Republican running, like 1960s, I think, Alabama, running for Congress, and he is in this town hall forum. Just here's his platform, and this lady in front, little old Southern lady, is like agreeing with him, clapping, agreeing with him. Yes, yes, yes. Afterward, he comes up and he's like, I hope I earned your vote. And she's like, oh no, I'm voting for the other guy. He's like, you were agreeing with me on everything. And in her Southern accent, she said, yeah, but you're a Republican. I'm a Democrat. I'm going to vote for a Democrat. That is the American national political landscape today.
Larry, your thoughts at a local level, in your case also at a supervisor level, is there more of the person than the party affiliation, or both just as equally important?
Well, there's people making it more polarized. And I'll be honest with you, I liken what's happening in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. as the two rival gangs that we deal with here, mostly the Northerners and the Southerners. They know they're wrong. They don't care. If it comes down from the top, that's what they do. And they're nothing but puppets. And we're seeing more and more of that. We're seeing more and more of the people suffering, things not getting accomplished because of this partisan things. And I think what they're forgetting is the Constitution, it starts off with we the people. I'm a Republican. I'm conservative, but again, it's common sense. It's about helping people and understanding. My position is technically nonpartisan. At the local level, it's supposed to be nonpartisan, and we're supposed to be able to go out and help everybody and do what we can and fix the potholes and return the phone calls. That's how I won. I'll be honest with you. I took out an incumbent, and the platform was on representing our constituents and returning phone calls and getting out there and making sure what happens. So, and that's what I'm doing. But I'm being targeted. I'm being targeted because I am a Republican, and they're doing everything they can to try to push this other side of it because they want to get rid of the right to farm ordinance. Agriculture is the enemy. All these political things going on, and so they're trying to do what they can to get their people, their side in order to vote their way. instead of just the common sense part. But it's supposed to be at this level. It is absolutely supposed to be nonpartisan. I think it should be that way, local, state, and federal too. But they've lost all concept.
Mhm. One other question, since we have you on, Larry. One of our concerns, and of course, this conference, being about the future or talking about the past, it was important, of course, that you talked about your grandmother, who was a very dear friend of mine, Mrs. Adeline Mello, or Idelina Mello, however people said it. But she was an icon in the Portuguese community, and in the Portuguese radio. Her radio program, Aurora de Portugal, was one of the most popular programs, and everybody listened to Mrs. Mello between 9 a.m. and noon at KCOK 1270. And for, as Larry said, almost for, at KCOK for about 30 years, and then at a closed circuit radio station. And her and I and a couple of other people had the audacity to start. It's what people call, it's what phones do today. But we saw this coming in late 1980s, in 1988, exactly. So it was important that you contextualize, of course, your upbringing with your mom and your grandmother and your family. But as we look at the future now, as we look at the future of the Portuguese American community, we are all over, as you mentioned. The prior panel mentioned also, I have two sons and they're not, living in Tulare County or Tulare. And so people move, demographics are different. Your daughters are, one of them's at Chico State. Who knows where she's going to end up? She might end up in Sacramento or Modesto or another state. That happens quite a bit. So for those of us who are in California, whether in San Diego South or all the way up to Arcata, what would you say to people who are, independently of their political leanings, our Portuguese background, and want to get into politics? What would you give them as an advice? Because they cannot get elected just like you. They cannot get elected with just the Portuguese vote. There's not enough out there. We don't represent, there isn't a single district in California where we represent enough, even at a supervisor level, and probably even at a mayor level, that we represent enough. In some districts we may represent, at the high end, 8%, at the local level. And so that can swing an election, but in a lot of places, we represent 2, 3, 4%. What do you say to Portuguese Americans or Americans, Californians of Portuguese ancestry, second generation like yourself, but even third and fourth, younger, that are thinking about getting into politics? What's the key to the success besides the party affiliation? Of course, that's, if that's an important part of where you're at, but what can people do? How can we get more Portuguese Americans elected?
We need, involvement. That's the big key right there. I know a Portuguese family here that there's several boys, I want to call them the sons. They're involved in school boards and irrigation districts and all these different things that they've gotten involved in. I'm trying to say this without sounding arrogant. I'm unique, and I think Lee can attest to this. I never did anything politically other than sheriff's department. And I was involved in about 20 years of sheriff campaigns and campaigning. And so that was my political involvement. And then what I did on the service and helping people. A lot of people don't have that exposure. I think what we need to do is start reaching out, start getting people interested, start telling them, if you're tired of it, get involved. All too often, I got people complaining, but then they claim they don't vote because it doesn't do any good, or they don't get involved. And I think what we should do is reach out. I think we had at our meeting in Sacramento, we talked about some good ideas and what to do to get endorsements and take our bylaws and figure out what's important to our culture and to our organization, and have those candidates come to us and see about getting involved and behind them. A lot of people don't even think about it. I know I've gotten people on boards now and other organizations that they've griped and complained. And once I go, well, this board's available, I can't find anybody. Do you want it? And once they're in there, their eyes are open. So yes, like I said, I do have a letter behind my name, but my point is to helping everybody and working with everybody, because that's what it's about. That's what it should be about. And I think that just involvement, seeking people out, talking to them, going to the festers and reaching out and talking to them. That's where we're going to find each other, right? A lot of us are. But they got to know they got to have support, because if they don't, I mean, I know the sheriff approached me 3 times, and it was no. The first 2, and the third one was, well, if you show me the support, then I'll do it. And I knew he would. I knew he'd supported me, but it was going to take more than that. And once it started showing up, then I felt confident to run, because I've seen it happen the other way. But we got to reach out to people. We got to talk to them. We got to, as you see them places, start talking to people and encouraging them to get involved. And that's the key to get them started, because most people don't even think about it. They think about a supervisor or someone at the state level. They don't think of a school board, an irrigation district, the smaller things, which gives them the exposure to move to the next spot. So that's where I think we should start.
Indeed, those are some very good points. Indeed. I mean, and that's where Festa can come in to be very efficient. I mean, years ago, people may have talked a lot about the soccer team, Sporting Benfica, but maybe their sons or their daughters don't know that much about Sporting Benfica anymore. Maybe they're looking at the local teams, in Stockton and other areas, and so why not? Why not use these popular Portuguese venues? That's a very good point, Larry, to talk about, hey, how can you get involved? Get involved, as you said, in your school board, get involved in your water district. People on the East Coast don't understand water districts, but they're very powerful in California and very important. And other boards as well. Some cities have, fire and safety boards that are elected, other areas as well. County Office of Education, most of the county superintendents of education are elected positions as well, and that's an important position for anyone of any ethnicity. Lee, as a consultant, what can we do to get more people, and how do we reach? And I'm also interested, of course, in having more people from the Valley, but also how do we, the demographics have changed in Northern Cal, in the Bay Area. We just talked about that a little bit in the prior panel of the Portuguese American community, but there's still quite a few Portuguese Americans in the Bay Area. There's still quite a few Portuguese Americans in the LA Basin, Artesia and Chino, not as much, but still a few, Chino, Norco area, and in San Diego. How do we get these areas that have no political representation at all to do that? And Larry had a good idea. Start talking about it at the festa as one aspect.
Well, it's all about how well you can organize into a block, and especially in very, very tight elections, be that like tipping point over. And I'll give you 2 perfect examples. One's going to be in Bakersfield. Right now you have Assembly District 35, Jasmeet Baines, and I will be how do I say it? I'll just put it out there. I prefer Jasmeet over her opponent, but that primary, they were separated by 298 votes. So that's one where if I'm Jasmeet, and I want to make sure that I don't got to worry about it just being 298 votes, the Portuguese community is one that I go out in court and organize and make sure that, and vice versa, the Portuguese community needs to be able to see that and say, hey, we have an opportunity here to really outweigh our influence in this district that is predominantly is majority Latino. I want to say it's like 52, 53% Latino district, takes in Delano, towns like that. But with such a small margin, you bring the entire Portuguese bloc with you, you're going to win that thing. You are going to win that thing. And so there's an opportunity for them to be courted, for them to be a power. Vice versa, you just mentioned the Bay Area Assembly District 20 is, I think it's 26 now. Anyway, the guy who's the current assembly member, Alex Lee, he may be a communist. He's 25, and hey, Denise, you know me, I just tell it like it is. And he only won the primary with 18% of the vote, because everyone and the mother's uncle ran for that open seat. So 18% got him through. The Republican came in second in a district that would not elect a Republican if his name literally was Nossa Senhora Fatima. Seriously. If the Republican could be called Our Lady of Fatima, still would not win. And so that, once again, when you're in a unique situation like that, you're the Portuguese community in Santa Clara and San Jose, you're like, hey, we have an opportunity. They've got 10, you got 10, 12, 15 people running for this seat on a state level. If we coalesce and get behind one candidate, we can punch above our weight and really be the tipping point for this candidate and have a lot of influence. So that's kind of, especially in areas where you're not seen at, where there's not a lot, if you're not running in Gustine or Hilmar, then you can't just say I'm Portuguese and expect to get elected. So and with that, Denise, since you did mention superintendent of schools, I'm actually in Napa, and I'm about to meet with the assistant superintendent of education for Napa County about all things political. So I do need to excuse myself, but thank
Sure.
you for having me on here. And Denise, you have all my contact information. Feel free to share it. If there's anyone who has any questions, comments, or would like to comment about my brand new haircut I got just for this yesterday.
Okay, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. That put us pretty important, that you got a new
Absolutely.
haircut. Thank you, Lee.
Thank
Best
you,
of luck
Denise.
to you. We'll be in
Appreciate it.
touch. Okay, thank you, my
Thank you.
friend.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Larry, we're going to turn to you now for the last question, which is, and I know you're busy as well. And you just mentioned some of the, some good points there that Lee made. I mean, if you can get those, there may not be a lot of Portuguese votes, but hey, if you're in a primary and it's just a few hundred votes and there's 500 Portuguese people, why not? That's going to make it the point. But you mentioned the Portuguese festa, and I think that sometimes we look at festas only for a place, to go have sopas, and that's great. And that's should be the main reason, the sopas, and of course the religious aspect before and the social aspect as well. But how important you think might be in some of these local elections, and not just in the Valley, even in Northern California, and a local election is a local election, and there's only a certain amount of people, and so how important do you think is something that Santa Clara did? And I'd like you to comment on that. Santa Clara has done for quite a few years what they call community forums at the Portuguese Hall. So they invite, for example, if there's 5 people running for supervisor, they'll invite all 5 of them, whether, and 9 out of 10 times actually, or 10 out of 10, they're not Portuguese, but they invite them to the Portuguese Hall. They invite the Portuguese community. It's a place that the Portuguese community has a sense of belonging, which is the hall. They feel comfortable. They may not feel comfortable going to another place that they normally don't go, especially the older generation. So they've been very successful at bringing candidates and having candidate forums during election season, and having, I've seen some of the pictures. I've never attended, but I've seen some of the pictures and some of the videos, and sometimes having, 200, 250 people, attend a community forum, Portuguese, most of them actually, obviously from the Portuguese community. How important do you think as a candidate that would be for the Portuguese community to organize community forums, and get Portuguese Americans to attend and hear the candidates, as a way, it's proven important for Santa Clara in many ways. It's a way that for people to, express their opinion about all kinds of issues, because a lot of our issues are also the same issue that the Mexican community has, or the Armenian community, or the, or the Italian community. We have a lot of the same issues, but then it allows us the opportunity to ask some things that are kind of important for the Portuguese, teaching Portuguese at a school, or this or that related to the organization. So my question and your thoughts on how do you see these as playing an important part in bringing awareness in our community and bringing these candidates to be aware of who we are? Because in some areas, I mean, Lee's right, in Hilmar, Gustine, and even Tulare, everybody knows who Portuguese are. But maybe, in big cities where there's a few more Portuguese, but, there's a million other people, they may not be known as well. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's extremely important. I mean, the Dolores Huerta Foundation does it. The Tulare County League of Mexican American Women do it. And a lot of organizations do it because it is important and it's effective. And that was kind of what I was alluding to. I know I didn't explain it very well, but that's something about getting endorsements from our organization, reaching out to people. I mentioned the festas, and I know festas but the festas was also social, if you remember, many, many years ago. There's business was conducted at festas. I'll see at the festa, and they talk, grandma would meet people and conduct business there. I mean, just in slide at a setting. So the soccer clubs, there's a lot of places where our cultures are meeting, and that would be the absolute spot to get everyone together. And I think it would show that we are serious, of being involved. We're serious on the issues, and to host these organizations, because I can attest to this. Some of these organizations are having these forums and they're slanted to their political agenda. Their candidates have been given the questions before. So what the way to control the message is us control the message. I'm not saying cheat. I'm saying have our forum, bring our people in, set our rules, and let's play a fair game, and let's choose the best candidate. But I personally think that, and I know you guys are working on it, the board is getting our goals, the mission of our organization, and finding people who are going to represent that for our Portuguese culture. And then let's get behind the guy or the woman, and then start getting our name out there. You put it on a flyer, they're represented by the organization, and start getting our name out there, and people will start paying attention. It's funny. I've got people, I go to the festivals and I got people come to me, hey man, congratulations, boy, I'm glad to see a Portuguese guy in there. I voted for you. Well, I know where they live. They don't even live in my district. But but they're putting their support behind me, and they're showing me. So I hear it a lot. And I think if we were to get active and start getting our name out there more, it'll take a while to start moving. I mean, my gosh, there's how many halls do we have in Visalia, Tulare, and all around that we could get access to
throughout the state? I believe there are 85, so we have a lot of them throughout the state that we could do. Yeah.
Anyway, just to cut it short, it's extremely important, and it's just like taking that candidate who wants to gripe all the time and encouraging them to become involved. Then, and I know we're not griping, but we need to get involved and get our name out there.
Indeed. Well, Larry, thank you so much. Thanks to Lee Neves as well. I appreciate both of you. Josh, unfortunately, sent me a message he couldn't make it. His meeting's still going on at the county level in Merced, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry. Best of success to you. I know you'll be a supervisor for as long as you want to be. We would like to see you at the state level, because we don't have very few representatives of Portuguese ancestry, as you know. Only 2 of them right now at the state level in California. We'd like to see a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th. But I understand that, there's a lot of, BS to go through, to put it lightly. And you do such a fine job at a local level. But hey, if you have the opportunity, don't pass up, because the Portuguese community needs another state representative. So think about that twice, okay, before that you say no to that opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And so Larry McCarty and Lee Neves, our panel was Navigating the Future, Portuguese Americans in California Public Service. Just to let you all know that we're going to, of course, sign off here in a few seconds. It is the 46th annual Luso American Education Foundation conference. This panel put together in collaboration with the California Portuguese American Coalition. We'll come back at 1:00. And of course, PBBI at Fresno State, putting all this together as well, with also the help of the Luso American Development Foundation, FLAT, from Lisbon, Portugal. We'll come back at 1:00 with a panel called Navigating the Future, Education in the California Portuguese Diaspora. We have 4 different representatives from the community that will be part of this wonderful panel, which will talk about education, not necessarily Portuguese language education, but education as a whole in the Portuguese community. At 2:30, we will have Luso American Education Foundation presentation called Navigating Projects in a Post-Pandemic World. Look at some of the projects, from scholarships to the youth camps to the conference and other fundraising projects, and how do we look at them now that we're back in the post-pandemic world where things have changed. And then at 4 p.m., we're also very excited about this one, because we're going to have young people, very young people. It's the panel Navigating the Future, Perspectives from Generation Z. And for those of you who don't, Generation Z, we're talking about young people, really young, between the ages of like 17. I think our youngest panelist is just turned 18, from 18 to about 27, 28 years old. So very, very young Portuguese Americans. I think we have 4 confirmed, 1 maybe, but 3 for sure. And so it will be an exciting panel as well. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Take care, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock with the Navigating the Future Education in the California Portuguese Diaspora. Thank you. Take care, everyone. See you later.